So I've always liked the idea of the Rincon. It's essentially a stripped down, lighter weight Clifton that can handle up-tempo work better. However, with the Rincon 1 and 2, I definitely had issues with its durability. Well, with after 100 miles on the Rincon 3, does it still suffer from that issue? Well, let's go ahead and dive into my full review. So throughout this review, I'll be using my Stoplight rating system, where if it gets a green, there's more pros than there are cons. If it gets a yellow, there's about equal pluses and minuses, and if it gets a red, that means that the negatives outweigh the pros. In the end, I'll give the shoe an overall rating of a go, a slow, or a no. So this shoe was purchased by myself with my own money, so there's no biases, no influence or anything. So let's go ahead and get into the review. Let's go ahead and start with the upper. The Rincon 3 fit true to size. I had no heel slip and just the right amount of room in the toe box. For being a pretty simple upper without much reinforcement, it still had a nice lockdown. I didn't have to crank down the laces and my midfoot felt secure even on sharp turns. So while the upper material is comfortable with its engineered mesh, I can't complain about it since it never left any hot spots or rubbing. But one thing that was downgraded comfort-wise from the previous models is the tongue. It went from being a nice amount of padding to being super thin, short, and unpadded. If you do have to crank down the laces around the ankle, this won't provide much protection or comfort. I wish they would have put the tongue from the Mach 4 on this shoe. So while your feet won't suffocate, the upper isn't as breathable as previous versions of the Rincon that had the bigger cutouts in the mesh. Alright, now let's move down to that midsole. As most Hokas do, the Rincon 3 has a good amount of cushioning underfoot. It uses compression molded EVA and has a stack height of 33mm in the heel, 28 in the forefoot with a 5mm heel to toe drop. So the CM EVA midsole isn't as plush as something like the Clifton. It's a bit firmer and a little more responsive. It feels cushioned when going slower, but also performs nicely when picking up the pace. It doesn't have the bounce like the new Super Foams, but definitely can handle faster efforts. I found it to be maybe a tad softer than previous Rincons, but overall it was the same idea of being a versatile foam. So with Hoka's Metarocker technology and their wide platform, the ride of the Rincon is super smooth. No matter the pace, there was never an ounce of clunkiness, and I never felt like I had to be on my toes. The shoe just glided me through my stride. Something that I've had issues with past Hokas is the midsole longevity. EVA isn't the longest lasting midsole material, but in the Rincon 3 I have a little over 100 miles on the midsole, and it's actually aged quite nicely. I feel like it has softened the midsole up just a bit, but hasn't compacted it down where it feels lifeless. I should be able to take this midsole up to 300, maybe even 400 miles. Alright, now let's move down to the outsole. So with previous versions of the Rincons, the outsole durability was one of the biggest weaknesses. It had little rubber coverage and the exposed foam started tearing away right after just a few runs. I'm happy to report that with the Rincon 3, the durability has vastly improved. The outsole rubber coverage has been increased and it closely resembles what you'll find on the Clifton. And the exposed foam has normal wear, but nothing crazy. The rubber itself shows very little signs of wear as well. I'm glad to see Hoka put some thought into the durability of this shoe. So while there is more added rubber, the rubber itself isn't overly grippy. It's perfectly fine for asphalt, concrete, and compact dirt roads, but it won't provide you much traction off-road or in snow or long grass. The Rincon has been good about finding a balance between a good amount of cushioning but keeping it lightweight. The third version comes in at 7.3 ounces, which is an ounce and a half lighter than the Clifton 8, and it's even lighter than the Clifton 1. Alright, it is now time for the run type stoplight portion of the review, where I'll go over speed day, everyday, long run day, and recovery day. Starting with speed day, the Rincon 3 gets a yellow light. So while I do think that the Rincon is very versatile and it's light enough and responsive enough to handle speed days. I think it's going to work best for marathon workouts, but if you're doing anything that's faster paced than that, I just find that there's just too much underfoot and kind of gets in the way. I personally think that the Mach 4 works a little bit better for speed day. For everyday runs, the Rincon 3 gets a green light. So with that protective midsole, that comfortable upper, just being a lightweight yet protective shoe, I found that this actually worked really great for everyday runs. Plus that increased durability in the midsole and the outsole made this a bit more of a workhorse, honestly. And I found that I was putting more miles on this and that it could handle what I was throwing at it. For long run days, the Rincon 3 gets another green light. So similar to everyday runs, that thick cushion really helps on those longer runs, keeps your legs a little bit fresher, super comfortable overall. I used this shoe for plenty of long runs during my marathon training. However, I did kind of prefer the little extra softness, a little more plushness of the Clifton 8. However, the Rincon 3 is still an awesome long run shoe. For recovery day, the Rincon 3 gets a green light. As though it's not as soft and plush as the Clifton 8, I did really enjoy using the Rincon 3 on recovery days. It has enough cushion underneath. Like I mentioned, that rocker is going to help you through your stride when you're kind of struggling to pick up your legs after a hard workout. And I think it's just a do-it-all type of shoe. So I've always thought the Rincon has been a very versatile kind of do-it-all shoe, but I think with the improvements in durability on this version, it's an even better value in that you'll get more life out of it, and it's just a better shoe overall that kind of takes the place of the Clifton in some instances. Yet I still think it's different enough where you can have both the Clifton and the Rincon and use them for different purposes. But I think if there's just one shoe you need to do it all, I think that the Rincon can handle that. Plus, it comes in at a very wallet-friendly price. So I think the shoe comes in like $110, $115, which is like almost $30 cheaper than the Clifton 8, and you get a lot of the same DNA from the Clifton 8. I think that this shoe is a great value, and it's honestly hard to find a lot of shoes at this price point nowadays. Unfortunately, I feel like $150 is kind of becoming the norm. Alright, so taking a look at the results here, there is a ton of green with a few yellows sprinkled in there, which means I give this shoe a go. Which means if you are in the market for a lightweight, high-cushioned, do-it-all, budget-friendly trainer, then this is a great option for you. Hoka has a ton of great shoes coming out this spring. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss my coverage of those shoes. Thanks for watching this review, and as always, keep on running.